I'm Eric Lanask, and I'm here again with Vineeth Ram, the Vice President of Global Marketing at Panduit. And we've been talking about the idea of unifying the physical infrastructure layer. And one of the things that you keep coming back to are power and cooling and the costs that are required as these networking requirements grow and grow and grow. What are you seeing in terms of power and cooling requirements?
Great. So here are some data points for you, Eric. If you look at one of the leading industry analysts, Gartner, I forget exactly what they said, but one of the recent reports said somewhere in the next 20 to 30 months, right, 85% of all the data centers around the world are going to run out of power, right? It's a pretty big statement. While you can question exactly whether that's 15 months or 35 months or whatever, the trend is certainly there, because what's really happening is a lot of the new next generation systems technologies, they exponentially higher power consuming systems, right? What's happening is they're as they become faster and faster, as they become bigger and bigger through consolidation, they are consuming more and more power, right? The power hungry. So that's causing this. In the meantime, data centers have been designed for certain peak capacities, right? You can't go do them. And as we know, there's a severe a supply issue from a power perspective. In several states like California are having huge challenges, right? We know that. The cost is going up significantly as well. And all of this impacts the entire agility, the availability of your entire data center itself. So there's a huge challenge around that. Now, just giving you numbers in terms of the cost, depending on which industry source you see, the cost of power and cooling, right, is begun to exceed the cost of all the systems infrastructure. So think of all your servers, your storage, your network devices, and other systems in the data center, right? The power and cooling cost, right, is actually exceeding that. So what's really happening, that's a significant issue. Because at the end of the day, our data center is about running mission-critical applications, right? It's supposed to be an IT-focused sort of an environment. But here you have the cost picture is very, very different now. So what's happening is IT executives are having to contend with this issue of cost of power, right? The availability of power, the supply side, and that's going to affect the uptime of their entire environment. So, and then there's another data point for you is for every 1 unit of power, right, there's a factor of 3 from a cooling perspective required, right? So really what really happens is for every 1 unit of power you consume, you've got to have 3 units of cooling, right, from a broader perspective as well. So there's a huge a chain effect of all of these things that are actually happening inside the environment, and that causes a huge challenge. So anytime we can have an impact on reducing that, we can make a big impact on the entire efficiency. Because here's an example, right? Think of the data center. Why are people doing consolidation and virtualization? It's really a cost reduction play. They're trying to improve resource utilization, right, and do more with less. Now, so the point is, if half your costs are coming from power and cooling and half are from the systems infrastructure, they're actually equally important, right? So now you can look at it and say the ability to reduce your power and cooling costs is almost as important as being able to run a virtualized environment, which is a very significant statement for us here. And that's kind of where we play, because the physical infrastructure really plays a big role. We are a key enabler for things like virtualization. We are required to put systems into production in a virtualized environment, because if we don't have the linkage between the physical and logical, can't really get that into production environment from an operations perspective, right? But then when it comes to power and cooling, we help to manage it, because another data point for you is if you look at the entire dynamics of power and cooling, there's a lot happening at the rack level, the cabinet level, and the room level, right? So really what's happening inside a server box, right, is somewhat limited. A lot of the power, so if you look at actually the sort of the dynamics of power, a lot of it is really happening at the cabinet and the room level. So that's where the physical infrastructure comes, because we're pretty expansive, right? We touch every single system in the data center. Right. We're part of every single rack and cabinet, and we sort of have a bigger room to play, especially given the fact that the power consumption is going up. So the ability to improve airflow inside the cabinets, better management of our cable, better management of the pathways, having better exhaust systems, monitoring the power consumption, making sure that you have availability of power when you want to provision a new resource. All of these things play a big impact, and that's kind of where we play at the physical infrastructure.
So when you're talking about optimizing that physical infrastructure in the hopes of lowering power and cooling costs, how much theoretically could a data center save?
We've seen number. Obviously, it depends on the scenario, type of data center, et cetera, et cetera. But from what we are seeing, Eric, based on some of our calculations, anywhere from 20 to 25% is what we can actually bring down. When we work with a sort of a cabinet, in a cabinet type of environment, we believe we can touch a 20% range without too much of difficulty, which really, as you can imagine, can have a pretty significant impact on the overall scenario. Again, it depends, again, as I said, on the type of the data center environment. Obviously, the more denser the configuration, the more higher the heat generated. So when you start going up to above 8 kilowatts, and get to 10, 12 kilowatts, per cabinet, right? That's where you start having more of a need to have much better reduction, and that's kind of where we play today from a passive perspective. Now, as we have active capabilities with monitoring, as we have more intelligent devices we're bringing into from our cabinet and a environmental and a humidity perspective, we think we can actually have an even bigger impact as well.
With the economy such as it is right now, is it easy for you to go to customers and say, look, we think we can save you 20, perhaps even more % in your heating and cooling costs?
Yeah, so this is exactly why a lot of the work we're doing on the reference architecture becomes extremely critical, Eric. So customers today, are in an environment where they are like, show me the money, right? Before you get any deal, you got to quantify the benefits of what we're really providing in a tangible manner. Panduit has the good fortune of having being known for producing very high quality, high reliability products for a long time. So we have a great image as being the BMW of our industry in terms of our product portfolio. Now we're taking that and putting that into integrated holistic solutions, right? And now we are quantifying the benefits of that, leveraging the reference architecture, again, working with key leaders in the industry like Cisco and IBM and EMC. So really the types of things we're doing are really, bringing together this unified integrated approach. And I think because of that, we're in a better position. The kind of company we keep within as leaders and analysts, we know sort of the assumptions that are there, the kind of best practices out there, and we know how to go bring these together. And this becomes critical, Eric, especially when you go to next generation technology. So for example, when Cisco launched the 7018 Nexus cabinet line, Panduit had been co-developing that cabinet with Cisco for the last 18 months, right? So when they launched the cabinet, when they launched their new switch, we were able to roll out an optimized cabinet, which automatically was having a significant impact on the reduced power and cooling equation as well for that particular cabinet. So that's the benefit of some things that we have, and we are one of the unique players in the industry who have that product on day one. So that's another area as well where we're able to work ahead of time. And sometimes the benefits we provide are in the customer premise, in the customer environment. Sometimes it's actually in the R&D phase itself, optimizing the design with the vendors like IBM and Cisco when they're doing their upfront designs.
Excellent. So now we've gotten a little bit into specifically the impact on power and cooling and then the savings that can be achieved. We'll be back in just a moment to talk a little bit about sort of the next part of that, which is, I think, green technology and the green movement.